Hi friends, welcome back to Shelby in the Book Club. I am Shelby Monet, and in today's video we are going to talk about all the things that I read, did not finish, touched, thought about in the month of January and some of December. Before we get started, I do want to let you know how this video is going to be set up and how they will be set up going forward. So I have my little notebook here with some stats. So how we'll do this is we'll go over my stats for the month. We will talk about my DNFs for the month. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you should, because I put polls up about these things over there, because it's just easier for me, about what you guys want to see in certain videos. So you guys said to include my DNFs in the monthly wrap-up video, so I am going to be doing that. Then we will talk about my completed reads and the book club pick, a review, and how I feel about that book. I will talk about that in length in a different video. Okay, so that's how these wrap-up videos will go going forward. You will probably see my Lola Bean notebook forever and ever in these videos, because this is where I take most of my book notes. For like videos and stuff, I do have a separate reading journal that I don't know where it is right now, so I can't even really show it to y'all, but I love this little journal. I actually probably need to go and order me a few more. So if you would like to hear my January wrap up, here you go. Okay, let's talk some stats. So in total, I read 8 books in the month of January. I DNF'd 6, so altogether I touched 14 books, which I'm kind of impressed with myself that I was able to complete 8 books. I probably would have been able to complete more, but we'll talk about that in a second. They were all physical reads except for like 1.5 of them, and the reason I'm saying 1.5 is because Sweet Soft Plenty Rhythm, I listened to like the second half, like less than half of that as audiobook. But I did complete The Love You Saved by Goldie Taylor as a complete audiobook. I listened to that from top to bottom, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that book. Most, if not all of these reads were 4-star. I don't think I gave anything a 5-star read, because although I enjoyed everything that I read, nothing was like blow me away phenomenal, I don't think. So 4-star. There may have been something that I gave like a 3.5. But I'm not recalling off the top of my head. So those are my stats. It took me on average like 2 to 3 days to finish a book. And I did a very good job. I think why January was such a good reading month is I did a very good job at, if I started something and I was not feeling it, I put it down. I did not try to force myself to read anything. I just put it down. Like I was like, okay, this is not for us. I'm saying for us, like I'm talking for me and the personalities. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. I did not force myself to read anything that I wasn't feeling. And I think going into February, that's something that I want to hold on to, because I was very much in a flow. That first week I got like 3 books done very easily. So I think I want to keep myself up with that momentum going into February. Excuse me, 2 to 3 days on a book. 4 days if it's over 400 pages, I would say. I think on average I'm reading about 100 pages a day. That's as long as I'm feeling good, I'm not too tired, so on and so forth. So I want to keep that momentum up in February. January it was like an amazing reading month for me. So I think in my mind I have kind of a goal of like, I know I can read 8 books a month. At a minimum I can read 5. So between 5 and 10 books, between 5 and 8 books, I think is a healthy like goal for me, because I want to keep up. Next month I'll do better at going in and screenshotting the statistics on story graphs so that you guys can see like what was a, you know, how many literary fiction, how many historical fiction, how many were by, you know, whatever page length and all of that stuff, because Storygraph does a very good job at those kinds of statistics, and I love that. So this is just a rough draft. Next month I will do better, I promise. What I do want to talk about real quick, because I think I counted this book and the next one. No, okay, I counted this as a part of a DNF because I decided to DNF it in January, but technically it's a December read. I didn't do a December wrap up because I did not read a whole lot in December, and that was just because it was busy, mental health, I wasn't really feeling it, so on and so forth. So now we'll talk about my December reads real quick, what I DNF'd, what I read. So what I DNF'd was the Thread Collectors. I think I briefly talked about this in a weekly vlog about how what kind of threw me off, and I got like a decent ways into this book. What kind of threw me off is that this book is written by a white woman and a black woman, and it talks about slavery and some touchy things, and I'm just kind of hard pressed to believe that, like, oh, the black woman only wrote the slavery parts and the white woman only wrote the opposite parts, and it wasn't bad. That just kind of got in my head, and I just wasn't able to comfortably enjoy it any longer. There also was a bit of a lull in the story, so like I think I wanted more. I didn't tell you guys the synopsis. So there is a slave named Stella in a Creole cottage in New Orleans that she sews very well. It talked about a bit of history that I had never heard of before that I do want to look up. It talked about how women that were passing but that weren't necessarily free could be purchased by a slave owner, and they like lived separately, and it's giving, for lack of better words, very fancy prostitution. But she like lived in her own house. The same goes for her mother, and kind of had some privileges that other slaves did not, which was interesting to me. I had never heard of this. This is why I think historical fiction is so important, because even though it's a fictional story, you can still learn things that you may have never heard of before. So I was like enjoying, she sews very well, and she is able to sew a little map to freedom in a fancy way. So she's doing that, but it's telling her story, her lover's story, who fled and went to join the Union Army, as well as it's telling a Jewish Union Army story and his wife's story. They're supposed to be connected somehow through the sewing, and how the two women risk everything for love, and so on and so forth. There was just a lull in the story, and I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling it. I think that and I use we loosely, but I think that there is a trend out there at comparing what slaves went through to what white women went through at the same time, and it is very different. Why? Because one had their freedom and they had their own will, even though women still aren't respected to this day. I don't think it's fair to compare a slave to a free woman, no matter what her beliefs are, because it just isn't accurate, right? So yeah, these two women were sewing things to make to help their men, one to comfort their man, the other to get their man to freedom, but the two things can't be compared. Again, I didn't get to the end of it, but those are some of the reasons why I didn't get to the end of it. I think if you like certain types of stories, then that'll be a book for you. The book that I did finish was S.A. Cosby's My Darkest Prayer. You guys know I loved Razorblade Tears. It was a book club pick last year. It was so good to me. It was fast paced. I thought it was a brilliant story. It was just really, really good. This was okay. I feel like when reading S.A. Cosby's work, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like all of his characters are the same. I feel like and this is my fantastical science fiction mind kicking in, I feel like if his main character had a soul, or if his main character time traveled, that's how his books are. It's like an adventure in maybe a different body, a little bit of a different surroundings. Like I feel like if you've read one of his books, you probably have read them all. This one, though, I think it's like one of his first books that were ever like published or whatever, because there is an introduction where he kind of is just like, be easy on me. This was like, you know, I hadn't been writing for that long, and so on and so forth. So I totally understand that. So this one is about Nathan Waymaker. He works in a funeral home, but he also has a past as he was a Marine and an ex-police officer, but he is dealing with some issues of grief because of how his parents were killed. But people also kind of know him as like a little bit of a fixer. I feel like, so he is asked to do some questioning about a murder of a local pastor who is kind of popular, and he does some research, he gets into some trouble, has to do some things, runs into some things. If you're looking for like a it's given like John Wick, but like black. If that's what you're looking for, I think you'll enjoy this. It's very southern. It takes place in Virginia. It is very much given country black man and country people issues. It's very much giving that. But I don't know what my neighbors are doing upstairs, but that noise is gonna irritate my soul. The only issue that I had with this, right? And I was gonna do like a full review video on it, but I was like, I'm not gonna do it because maybe I'm just being facetious, right? Sorry, y'all. Maybe I'm just being facetious. There is a chapter where he is having relations with this porn star. The porn star is the daughter of the pastor that has been killed. The way the men in this book talk about this lady and her job was like so unnecessary to me. What did that have to do with the plot of the book? What her being a porn star had nothing to do with anything in the book. The only important thing about her was that she was the door, like she could have been a suspect, right? Because she didn't like her daddy for reasons. But then it kind of like implied that like the reasons that she didn't like her daddy, like her rough childhood, is the reason that she is now a sex worker. And I want to believe that S.A. Cosby is a better black man than that. I want to believe that he is a better man than that, and that he is more evolved than thinking that just because somebody was SA'd as a child at the hands of their father doesn't mean that they're going to turn around and become a damn sex worker. What is wrong with you? And then like he was just like chest puffed out, like the main character, like, oh, I had sex with a porn star. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Like, I really wanted to know, like, are men that terrible? Are y'all that dumb? I know the answer to that. You don't have to answer it. But those were my December reads. Kind of enjoyed one, but not enough to finish it. And the other one, the S.A. Cosby book was good. Like, it wasn't terrible. It was, I was able to finish it, and it got me out of a reading slump. So there's that. So now on to my DNFs for the month of January. We are going to start with Y'all might hear my child in the background. We're gonna start with the one that I hated the most, Wade in the Water. I did a book review on this. I don't understand how this book got past anybody. I feel like this book was targeted towards a white audience. And then I was talking to someone and they confirmed that the relationship between the characters in this book don't even end in a happy way. Like the white woman ends up manipulating this child and becomes someone else in her life that causes her harm. What the hell? So it's supposed to be about a little girl named Ella and this woman named Catherine, who is a white woman who comes to this small black Mississippi town. But you know what? We're not even gonna talk about it anymore. If you want to watch the vlog, the reading vlog that I did for it, you can. I'm not the target audience for that book. I think there is a specific audience for it, and y'all might enjoy it. I just am shocked and appalled that a black woman wrote that book. Next, we have The Thousand Crimes of Ming. I'm going to go back and give this another chance. I'm probably going to put this high on my list in March because it is a Western about an Asian American man who, it says that it's like a thriller, a love story. I just couldn't get into a groove of it. And sometimes that happens, right? I firmly believe that Gunner is gonna drink his water loudly. I really believe that sometimes the books that you get and books that you DNF just aren't for the current version of yourself, unless it's like a hard, like unless something in the book is a hard no, like if it's like racism or something like that. But I love Westerns. I'm gonna give this a second chance. There were other things that I knew that I wanted to read, that I knew that I was going to enjoy or thought I was going to enjoy, that kind of bumped this down on the list. So I am going to read this eventually. The next two books on the list kind of give the same vibe. So Notes on an Execution. I love true crime. I need to be in the right headspace to listen to true crime or to read true crime, to do anything involving true crime. I just got to be in a certain headspace, and this one was getting very difficult to read for me, but it is a interesting book. So it tells the story of this serial killer on his execution day, but it also tells the story of women in his life, his mom, the detective that is working on his case and that caught him, and someone else, I believe like his sister-in-law. I'm gonna go back for this one. I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting concept, and again, I love true crime. So if you like true crime, I think that you would really enjoy that book. Next up is Brotherless Night. This one, the reason that I couldn't get into this the way that I wanted to, it is a language thing. Some of the words I didn't really understand. The way that the book is written, I think I need to like read this while I'm listening to the audiobook. But the content itself was really good. I just felt like it's being told in a way that is kind of difficult for me to follow along with. And I felt like I was thinking very hard while I was reading this. So I do want to go back when I like have some time and can just sit and like take the time to read this book the way that it needs to be read. I think y'all can hear my baby bothering me. But it takes place in India during a civil war, or the start of a civil war for India, and it's about the daughter in this particular family and the things that she experienced, the things that her brothers experienced during this time. I sincerely want to go back and read this. It was good. I need the time and the space. Last but not least on the DNF list is Spare. This bored me to death. The audiobook, the physical book, like, I think I just don't care about these people enough to actually finish the book. I might try and go back later on and do something about it, but I don't think it's just not high on my list. I really got this book because I felt left out, and everybody was talking about it, and I was just like, I want to talk about it too. I want to know all the business, but I could just watch TikToks for that. I'm okay. So those are my DNFs for the month of January. Now let's get into the books that I actually finished. So first, we are going to start with The Love You Save by Goldie Taylor. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to this book. I'm going to be very honest with you and say that I picked it because of the book cover. I wanted something to listen to, and I got it off of Liberal FM. I don't know if you guys know, but you can support Shelby in the bookstore via Liberal FM. The link is in my bio. And I saw the cover. There was a little black girl on the cover. I did not know who Goldie Taylor was before listening to her memoir. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to her life story. It was a bit sad, but it wasn't your typical memoir where, you know, oh, I found Jesus and my life turned around. Few trigger warnings. There is some essay in the book. She does live a pretty hard life, but it does talk a lot about the relationship between a mother and a daughter, and I think how much daughters need their mothers, even when moms don't really know what to do. You know, it does talk about mental health of a child. I think we often look at children, not me per se, I'm saying we as a community, we often look at children as if they're dumb and that they don't know anything because they don't have the same world experience as adults, right? And that is what? Inaccurate. Life doesn't start happening to you when you turn 18. Life happens to any and everybody, unfortunately. And I think something that this book points out is that it is important to have some sort of lines of communication with your kid about the things that are happening to them and how you can help them and so on and so forth. It does cover abuse in a way that I think is a little bit different. She was like bullied by her cousins a lot, and I think in the Black community we kind of see that as a rite of passage, where it's like, oh, they not bullying you, that's your family, they doing that because they love you and they want to prepare you for the world. No, I think there's a line, like a line between bullying and abuse. I think there's a line between, let me take that back. I think there's a line between like children playing and abuse and bullying. That's what I meant to say. So she went through a lot, but she did overcome. She's extremely smart. Like, she was an extremely smart child, and won all these awards, which I thought was really cool. I think it also does cover a bit about like teen dating, and it was a good book. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that. The rest of these are not in the order of which I read them. They are just in an order of what looked aesthetically pleasing in the pile. So we have In West Mills by Deshaun Charles Winslow. I keep mixing his name up. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It is about Azalea Knott. Her nickname is Knott, and how she has made a bunch of life choices that other people have had to help her fix, right? Which I don't think is a bad thing. I think community is important. I think it's important to have people in your life. But I think really what this book is about is community, and the fact that community is really important. But and also, community or not, you need to learn your lessons and get yourself together. It also kind of covers how everybody has secrets, right? And you got to be careful with who you trust those secrets with, and that what you know as family may not always be your blood family. That part of this book was really interesting to me, because I wonder across the African American diaspora, how many people don't know who their actual parents are because someone could not take care of a baby and gave their baby up or something like that. Like, that's kind of common for a certain era in Black history, I want to say. And I mean, it's probably still happening today. But that was interesting to me. How, like, is your mama really your mama? I know mine really my mama because I look just like that lady. I act like her too, whether she want to admit that or not. But it was really, really good. It's a short book. It did make me cry at the end. But it was really, really good. And I'm very interested in reading the rest of Deshaun Charles Winslow's work, which we are doing. We're reading his latest book, Decent People, as a book club pick for February. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going to have to wait to read that until the end of the month, so that I don't forget anything and all that sort of thing. So that was really good. Next, The Destroyer of Worlds by Matt Ruff. Yes, this is the second book in the Lovecraft Country collection. I want to start off by saying I sincerely think that we are going to get more Lovecraft Country books. I think we're going to be returning to Lovecraft Country for a little while at least. And I'm totally excited about that. So this one, Atticus and his father travel to North Carolina, where they plan to mark the centennial of their ancestors' escape from slavery. What I love historical fiction. So I loved the flashbacks that this offered. I love that they were able to like travel, and it gave the essence of like our ancestors are guiding us. I love that. We did return to all of the other characters as well. So George, Hippolyta, Letitia, Ruby, we got to see all of them again, and they all were doing some magical stuff or some stuff they didn't have no business doing, and then they had to come together to save each other. And I just thought that it was really, really, really good. There is some closure in this book. I think there were some questions that I personally had after reading Lovecraft Country about like, what does this mean for this character and so on and so forth. They were answered in this book. This book does end on sort of a cliffhanger, not such a dramatic cliffhanger that if there wasn't another book, like, I would be okay, but it does leave space for there to be other books. So I'm excited. I thoroughly enjoyed reading this. It felt good. I will say something that I want to point out. I think a lot of people don't realize that Matt Ruff is not a Black man. This and Lovecraft Country are written by a white man, right? And why I point that out is because he writes Black characters in a way that is not offensive, and that is very important. I don't think that you have to be a certain color to write a certain type of character. I do think it is your responsibility to write those characters with grace, right? And not in a way that is offensive. Whereas when I was talking about the thread collectors and Wade in the Water, it's like, it's just a thin line to tread, and I think we should be careful, right? I think Matt Ruff is a very good example of being able to write Black characters as a person that is not Black or of color, and he tells our history very well, I think, and he just does a very good job. Okay, next we have The Color of Family by Jerry McGill. I did a review for this. Y'all know I love this book. This tells the story of the Payne family and some trauma that they went through as a family. I think this talks a lot about how the tragedy of one family member is a tragedy of all. The importance of family and the lack thereof, I should say, and how trauma really does, if you allow it to, will dictate the decisions that you make, and people will be very judgmental of that. But I don't think that we as people give ourselves enough grace to y'all should see him swatting my hand because I ain't petting him where he wants to be pet. We don't give ourselves the grace to dig deep, and I think this book is a personification of that, right? Because when I first finished reading it, or while I was reading it, I was just like, it's very much surface level drama, right? It's messy. But then when I sat back and thought about it, it's kind of one of those things where we only know what people tell us. We only know what we see. We don't know anything other than that. And the people that know the details, excuse me, are the people with the experiences. There is also a chapter in here from the mom's perspective where she is very honest about motherhood from her standpoint that I thought was very important to read, and very important to hear. It kind of gave me Latoya Watkins vibes in Parish. Like, there are just some things that we don't talk about. They need to be spoken about. I don't necessarily agree with the things that she said, and also I'm not a mother. I mean, I am to my dog, but I haven't given birth to a child. I haven't given birth to multiple children. So there are some things that I just won't be able to speak on. Speaking of motherhood, let's talk about Night Wherever We Go. Bless You, Gunner by Tracy Rose Payton. I enjoyed the mess out of this book. Bless you, Gunner. Everybody in the comments, if you made it this far, say bless you, Gunner, in the comments. This is a historical fiction about a plantation in Texas with 6 enslaved women, and the plantation is not doing its best financially, so they hire another slave to come and try to like impregnate the women on the plantation. And it's basically a story about how they all have had to stick together to try to not get pregnant and to protect each other. I think it is a story about sisterhood. I think it's a story about not being able to, like, they didn't necessarily like each other, which happens, right? But that didn't stop them from trying to protect each other the best way that they knew how. It just was, it was a good book. It's a short one. It's not long at all. I sincerely enjoyed this book. Next, we have The Bird Tattoo by Zanya McHale. I got this on a whim. I think I saw somebody talking about it, but it was one of those books where I saw it and I was like, oh, that looks really pretty. I want that. And when I tell you, it is a phenomenal story. It is about a woman named Helen, who is from a small town. She is a Yazidi woman living in a mountain village in Sinjar, northern Iraq. And it talks about how the war affected her relationship, her family, her small town. Trigger warning, it does talk about some SA. But it really is a story about overcoming. So she was captured and taken to this place where she was sold to multiple men to be their wives, so that they would now be Muslim. She was abused in some cases she wasn't, but she had to escape. It's a really empowering story. The author did an amazing job. It reminds me a lot of what is the name of that book? The Stationery Shop that I read last year. And it made me cry. It reminds me a lot of that. So if you enjoyed The Stationery Shop, I think you would enjoy The Bird Tattoo. I think I've highlighted all through this book, underlined. There were just so many things that were so inspirational. There's a love story in here. It just was so good. It was so good, because it starts off very hard with her, the story of her capture and the things that she experienced while being captured. But then, which I like that the author did it this way, then it kind of goes into how she met her husband and what her village was like, and like all of these bonds and relationships that she built, and what her life was before, which was so cool to me. It was so rich in culture. The way her husband met were so cool. When they got married, they got this little bird tattoo. I'm gonna go tell somebody I won't marry them and we could get little tattoos instead of rings. It was just such a not me cheesing on her. it was such a good story. It was heartwarming. But again, I think it is a story of hope, right? That yeah, life is going to life, right? And like there was a lot about grief in here too. About how there are steps to grief, right? That like grief is not just a final destination that you get to, but there are steps and there are stages to grief. And I think that's something that's important. Not just when tragic things happen to you, but when your life changes, right? When you have to move, when you leave a job that you thought you were going to be at for a long time, when things don't go the way that you want to, all of those things are grieving. And it's not just with grief, but like with healing in general, it's not this final destination. Like this gonna be a little tangent. I think we are taught that like, oh, you need to heal and it is a final destination, right? That you get there and that is it and that is all. And that is not realistic. Healing is continuous. Loving is continuous. Growth is continuous. All of these things are continuous. You don't just get something and then that is it and things are supposed to be happily ever after, because you have now elevated yourself, right? When tragic things happen to you, you are at a new level in life. You see things differently. Everything is different. You feel different. You do things different. So now you have to learn this level. It's continuous. And then once you do learn how to live with your grief, right? That is also a new level in your life. So there are just a bunch of, it's a good book. Read it. Okay? It's a good book. Read it. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Sweet, Soft, Plenty Rhythm. Now, this one was a bit of a chunker compared to everything else that I read in the month. How many pages is this? Like 350-ish pages almost. It is about a musician, a jazz musician, that they call Circus. And they call him Circus because that man is a damn circus clown. His life is a mess at his big age of 40. There are just certain things that I expect people to know in their 40s, or a certain way that I expect people to act in their 40s. But I guess that is unrealistic because growth and stuff is linear. I mean, it's not linear, it's continuous, right? Like you continue to grow, you continue to learn. But this book kind of shows how his actions don't only affect him, but it affects the women in his life. So we were able to meet his daughter. We met a woman that he got pregnant, that he was all like, you need to get an abortion, and she was like, at our big ages of 40, sir, no thank you. We met like some women he dealt with here and there, and it kind of showed that he was emotionally unavailable, but his emotional unavailability affected those women in certain ways. I will say that out of everything that I read this month, this one, I enjoyed everything, but this one kind of stuck with me a little bit differently, in a lot of different ways. Don't you bark. My child, he was like, you're not gonna be great and just make a video with me being quiet. I'm gonna act a donkey. But yeah, this kind of stuck with me in a way that I can't really explain. I don't necessarily have the words, but it was really good. I will say the reason that it wasn't a 5-star read for me was because the synopsis kind of implied that we were going to get something different than what we actually got. I thought that it was going to be more about Circus and Maggie, who is the character that he got pregnant, opposed to all of the other women. I think I could have done without all of the other women that were talked about in the book. Come on, come say hi. He don't want to say hi to y'all. I really wanted more of Maggie. I think her character is important. I think she might have been my favorite person in the book, to be honest with you. Because she really was like, boundaries, we gonna set them. And I'm gonna have my baby anyway. And you gonna do right. That don't mean that we have to be in a relationship, but you will be in this kid's life, and we can maintain a friendship. And it was thought-provoking as a woman that is not 40, but dating and learning how to navigate that and so on and so forth. So it was a pretty good book. It was a pretty good book. I think y'all should read it. All of these books, including the ones that I did DNF, are available at shelbyinthebookstore.com. If you want to purchase any of them, your money is highly appreciated. Your time, your support, it all is highly appreciated. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, if no one has told you today, I love you. You are kind, you are smart, you are important. Bye, friends.